afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session on how to incorporate what's new in material design into your existing code base. My name is Lynn Jepsen. I'm the engineering lead of Materials Web team.
And my name is Adrian Secord. I'm the eng lead for our shared code libraries.
So we're going to show you how to incorporate all the new goodness of material design into your existing developer workflow. You're probably in this talk because you've already built an application, and you're wondering, all these new material tools and components, they sound awesome, but realistically speaking, can I incorporate them into my existing code base? The answer is yes. Okay? We're going to show you how to update pieces of your app to use material design without feeling like you have to rewrite your entire application. But first, let's talk about some of the new things in the material design ecosystem and how that supports our existing Mvc libraries. Then we're going to do a walkthrough of the code and show you some example code actually using MDC. And then we're going to talk about some of the benefits of using MDC in your existing code base. So what's new in material? There are a lot of new things in material design this year. We've done a lot of announcements. We've done improvements to our guidance. We've had improvements to our components. And we've launched a brand new material tools suite. We're going to show you how each of these tools supports developers. The first tool you should absolutely know about is material design guidance. We've really expanded and enhanced these articles this year. So it starts with an overview of the material metaphor, and then it dives into some of the foundational UI practices around color, typography, elevation. Now, this is all really good, interesting reading, but perhaps a bit theoretical when you're trying to incorporate material design into your existing code base. So, Material Design Guidelines also provides tactical guidance on how to use our components, like button, app bar, text field, etc. These articles, they're applicable to developers, not just designers. So let me give you an example. Say your designer makes a mock with a material design button. When you go, the button, it shows text. But when you go to put the text inside the button, inside your application, the text wraps to 2 lines. You're not sure if you should increase the width of the button or just let the text wrap. If you read the article for the material design button, your question is answered quite quickly. There is clear guidance that you should not let the text wrap for a button. These articles, they help developers guess correctly when you're in the middle of feature development. Now, to make sure that these articles are applicable to developers, we have our own engineers, like myself and Adrian, actually collaborate with designers as they're drafting these articles. Our own collective engineering experience, it provides a lot of perspective on what sorts of problems developers frequently encounter.
So that first part with all the guidelines really feeds into the second part we want to talk about, which is MDC. So MDC stands for Material Components, and it's our set of shared libraries that you can use to build material apps and websites. It's actually 4 separate libraries, and they're built to match the guidelines that we see on the design website. We want to support developers where they're at right now, so where the libraries, the platforms we choose, are chosen based on where you're developing. So the first one isn't going to be too surprising. We have a library called Mvc Android. Mvc Android is the open source evolution of Android's previous design support library. So essentially, we've taken a piece of what used to be inside of Android and pulled it out into the open source, into GitHub, so that you can use it directly, interact with us, and work with us on the GitHub repo. The second one is Mtc Ios. This is the open source version, much similar to the Android one, of Google's internal UI library. So you might be a little bit surprised that Google does iOS development. I'm not sure if you are or aren't. Depends on where you're coming from. But actually, Google is dedicated to serving its customers on whatever platform we find them. Fun fact, actually, Mtc Ios was the first open source library that Material put out way back in 2015. And it's been hanging out on the GitHub repo since then, and we've been iterating and developing and interacting with everyone there. Another fun fact, actually, at I/O 2018, there are as many developers who say they're developing for iOS as for Android. The third platform you might be not quite as familiar with, depending on sort of what talks and things you've been going to at I/O this year, but it's Flutter. So Flutter is a UI framework. It's written in the Dart language, and you write your app once, and then it compiles down to native Android and iOS apps. Flutter is currently in its first public beta. It's developing a lot of buzz with developers. And you might have actually seen the talk earlier today by one of our colleagues, Will Larsch, called Code Beautiful UI with Flutter and Material Design. If you didn't see the talk and you're interested in seeing it, you can actually catch it on YouTube in a couple of hours.
For web, we focus on providing two core web technologies, CSS and JavaScript. So as many of you probably know, the web is a very diverse platform. There are a lot of ways to do web development. We found that providing CSS and JavaScript makes MDC Web usable by multiple web frameworks. We've also developed a way of wrapping our JavaScript so that we can use it in other web frameworks. Now, we've heard that a lot of existing code bases are written in one web framework in particular, React. Which is why today we'd like to introduce a new MDC library for React. It depends on the CSS and JavaScript of MDC Web. Now, this library is still in alpha, but we encourage you to go and check it out and give us feedback on what's working.
So we want to emphasize that all the MDC libraries are open source. They're there, out there, on GitHub for you to see, to play with, to interact with, hopefully to contribute to, even at the very worst if it's just sending us some issues when you find a bug. And we want to make sure that these libraries use modern development practices and that they're aligned with the kinds of development workflows that you yourselves are using. A second piece I'd like to introduce here, which we've seen before in previous talks, is called the Material Theme Editor. This is a plugin for Sketch. If you're not familiar with Sketch, it's a very popular design tool. People use it for mockups, for prototyping, that sort of thing. And if you use the Material Theme Editor inside of Sketch, the cool thing is it knows all about the MDC components. So you have a lot of confidence that whatever gets designed by either yourself or your designer will translate really well to code. A second piece that complements the Material Theme Editor is Gallery. So Gallery is really cool in that Gallery you can use to sort of share different mocks, collaborate, comment on them with all your different team members. But the neat thing is if you're using the theme editor, Gallery basically sucks in a whole bunch of metadata that came from using the theme editor and can display interactive things like measurements, fonts, what the colors are that are set. And even probably more importantly for developers is that you can tap or click on any of the elements that you see in a mock and get the link to the appropriate code documentation. So here, though you can't see this because it's probably really far away, the user has highlighted that first text field on the top, and it's showing some measurements in red, that kind of thing. But even more importantly is the part over on the right, where it's actually giving you a link directly into the Android docs for the MDC text field. This is really great because you know that you're jumping right into the right thing, and you're not trying to figure out, oh, where did that doc go? How do I get there? So this is a really fantastic way to collaborate with design. So using MDC in your code base, we've been talking about this. Let's get right down into some code. We developed MDC to be incorporated directly into your code base. We really, really wanted to avoid forcing you into getting into some huge framework where you had to do a whole bunch of setup or had something where it sent its tentacles into all the different aspects of your app. Instead, we wanted you to be able to take, say, MDC button and plunk it down in your app and get it working right away, and not have to necessarily buy into a giant framework. So you're going to see next some examples from Android, iOS, and the web. So first, let's pretend that you are about to go and get yourself a new puppy. So you're very excited about this, and you're up on the dog adoption websites, as one does. And of course, everyone knows the most important part about bringing a new family member into your family is, or maybe the most fun part, is choosing the name. So you're a developer. You've got to choose a name. You're coming up with all sorts of different suggestions from yourself and your family and your friends. What are you going to do? You're going to write an app to track all these names. So we're going to build our own app here. This is our view controller. This is going to start in Xcode. So it's written in Swift. It also, MDC works just fine with Objective-C. And this is really just starting with the standard template that comes out of Xcode. Xcode, by the way, is Apple's IDE for generating code. And this just comes straight out of the default template and loads up some example data, and then just gets a view on the screen. So if you start with this, you get this very, very basic dog name tracking app. All right, so we have our dog names here. It's wonderful. We've collected a whole bunch of them. But of course, as you go about your day and talking to people, you're going to find even more dog names that you want to track and rank in your dog name tracking app. Of course, so this is a great example of using a material floating action button. So instead of you having to go into the code and add something to an array somewhere, you can just tap the button and add a name that way. So first off, you got to get the code, right? So our code, of course, exists in GitHub. You can download that immediately using Git, all the normal things. But at least on iOS, the standard way to get code is to use a package manager. So Cocoapods is a standard package manager on iOS. And here is a pod file. If you're not familiar with this, it's not very exciting. But what you have to do is just reference this material components pod, and then run pod install to download material components and all of its dependencies onto your local disk so you can use them. The next step is just to wire up this material button the exact same way you would normally. So back in this Swift code, you can see at the top, we're just importing material components. And then next, we're creating a floating button. So the class name in this case is Mvc floating button. So we're creating that new button. And then we're setting its icon and its background color and putting in the view hierarchy just as you would a normal button. So if we do all this, you get this nice lifts view, and in the bottom corner there, we have a nice little purple fab that you can, floating action button, that you can tap, and you get all the normal little ink ripples and the different effects you would expect for pretty much for free.
Let's talk about a completely different example for the web. Say you have an existing HTML form. I'm going to show you how to replace just this input element with a new MDC text field. MDC Web is installable through Node Package Manager. You just have to run this one-line command. It's both easy and fast to install our code into your code base. You'll need to actually update your source code to use MDC Web. So let's start with a text field. You just need to copy our text field HTML into your form. Now, our text field HTML is documented on GitHub. Here we have the documentation for the text field component. The HTML structure is called out quite early in the documentation so that you can quickly copy-paste. And each of our components for web follow this documentation format. The next step is to actually import our Sass files into your Sass files. Sass is a technology which compiles into CSS, and it works with existing open-source bundle systems, like Webpack. Finally, you need to initialize the JavaScript on the HTML element. And this is all you need. You get a nice, lovely text field working on your website. Users can interact with this text field like they would any text field on any website. And check out the animation of the line ripple and the floating label. This is material design approved animation. It provides valuable feedback to the users who are interacting with your website.
All right, so back to our little dog name tracking app, which, the first thing you should probably do is come up with a better name than that. But let's pretend you're really into this app. You're very excited about it, and you think it's the best one of these out there, and you decide to push it a little further. You work up with maybe a friend a branding story for your app. So you're not just it's not just a simple app anymore. You want to make sure that you've expressed all the right typography and color system and maybe different elements of the app. So it all comes together and works as a single branding story. And let's pretend in your graphic design aspect of your brand, you're really more into sort of like sharp corners and edges than you are these round, circly type things. This is an excellent example of something that we can use material theming for. You might have heard material theming. I hope you've heard about material theming in the other talks in I/O. But this is a great time where we can take a little bit of branding, sharp corners, and apply it to a really visual, very forward element in your design, which is the fab. So what we're going to do is transform our fab from the circular one we get by default into this nice diamond shape. So back in the code here, anything in Mtc Ios that you can affect its shape takes a thing called a shape generator. And in the highlighted code here, we're creating this shape generator. And we actually have given you in the library a few standard shape generators that you can use. They do simple things like take rectangles and cut off corners at various angles, or maybe they round off corners at various radii, that sort of thing. And in this case, what we're doing is we're going to take a square, which is or the bounding box of the original button, and we're going to cut off its 4 corners at 45-degree angles so we get this nice diamond shape. So that's all that's happening in the highlighted code. We create this shape generator, and we assign it to the fab. And if we do that and rerun our code, we get this. So you have this nice diamond-shaped fab popping up in the bottom, and you get all the normal effects that you would expect, like the ripple and the different animations for free. And every time your users go and interact with your lovely fab down there, they are getting a little burst of your brand in that button.
All of our components allow for customization. So let's talk about the text field example on the web platform. Say your designer wants to customize all the colors of a text field. He wants the line to start at gray on page load, but then when a user hovers over the text field, he wants it to change to orange. Your designer also wants the line to change to a slightly different shade of orange when the user clicks on the text field and starts entering text. And your designer wants to make sure that the label matches the color of the line. How do you build all of this? You build it using, back, forward. You build it using MDC Web Sass mixins. So these Sass mixins are APIs that developers can use to customize components. Here we have the code to customize the text field. At the top, we have code to customize the gray colors for the idle state of the text field. In the middle, there's code to customize the hover state. And at the bottom, there's code to customize the focus state. Focus state is when the user actually clicks on the text field and starts entering text. Now, you can implement a lot of customization using these Sass mixins, and you don't have to worry about all the choreography of all these color changes. Now, for those of you that have Android applications that are already built using Material Design, the MDC Android team has made it really easy for you to upgrade your existing MDC text fields to a new outlined variant of this text field. Here we have some code for a form and an XML or an Android XML file. All you have to do to upgrade to an outlined variant is to add this one line of code to the style attribute. With that, you get a new form of text field. It looks like this. It's our outlined version. You can think of this outlined version as another form of customization. If this outlined version looks better with your app's existing graphic design, then use it. And because this is an Android component, we've also made sure that it works with existing Android theming. So if you've already set your Android theme colors to the right shades of orange, then this text field will inherit those colors. Now, we've shown you a lot of code here at I/O, but perhaps looking at code from the back of an I/O stage is not the best way to learn. The best way to learn is to actually write code, which is why we've created 30 code labs for you to go and enjoy that work with MDC. We have code labs for all of our platforms: Android, iOS, Flutter, web. For Android, we have code labs in Java and Kotlin. And for iOS, we have code labs in Objective-C and Swift. We don't have any code labs in React yet, but if you want code labs in React or some other technology that you're using, let us know. We really want to make sure that we're targeting the technologies that developers are already using.
So now that we've seen some code, we've seen some examples of getting some MDC things into code, we want to go back a step and say, like, why use MDC? We really believe that using the MDC libraries helps you create beautiful products. We believe that they should be pretty easy for developers to use, and we definitely believe that they provide an excellent user experience to your users. So not only do you get this sort of like experience of using the code, and hopefully it's a little smoother and easier to use, but this actually brings a lot of value to your users. Let's go into a little bit more detail. So each one of our components is built to be pixel perfect. We collaborate with the designers infinitely to add polish, to get all the details right. We worry about the fills and the strokes and the radii and all the anti-aliasing and all that sorts of thing. And we also do a lot of research and user testing. Material as an organization actually has researchers on staff that go out and take our components, put them in front of people, and test them and see what works better and what doesn't. We actually have a very good example of this with the text field that we were seeing before. You might have seen it had like very heavy outlines and very broad or very prominent fills. Our original text field that we released in 2014, when we went out and did some user experience, some user research, we found out that people didn't actually, in the middle of a busy screen with a whole bunch of different things in it, people didn't actually know necessarily that they were supposed to tap into it and fill out the text. So they were missing, say, filling out an important part of a form. We went back and redesigned based on that experience and actually republished maybe a year ago the text field spec, updated all the code so that it became a better text field for everyone to use. The other thing that we do is designers, of course, are not a sort of one-size-fits-all. There's many different kinds of designers. So on Material, we have visual designers, we have interaction designers, we have people who do motion design, and we work with all of them to make sure that every aspect of these components is as good as possible. The other piece is that MDC is production ready. We work very hard to make it optimized for various performance metrics, for memory, for CPU, that kind of thing. We test on a wide range, an exhaustive range of devices and browsers and situations. We also stress test things with the open source community. So you could imagine that maybe Google only uses these components in a sort of certain way, and no one else ever uses them a certain way. But that's OK, because we have open source contributors who are using them in all sorts of different ways, and we get all that and fold it back in so that everyone gets the benefit of that experience. The other thing that's really important is this is how Google ships its apps worldwide for quite a number of years now. All our Android and iOS web apps are out there using exactly this code to ship. So we're used to doing sort of the Google scale performance and optimization that you get the benefit of too.
The third reason why you should use MDC is because it helps you build features faster. So using our components can really speed up your development time. We've already spent months of developer and designer time building these components from scratch. So we want everyone here today to feel like they don't have to build components from scratch. They can just quickly install and use our components in your code base. In fact, we also don't want you to be tied to Material Design's visual expression. So if your designer wants to make changes, like customizing the color of a text field or the shape of a floating action button, then there are APIs developers can use to build that customization. We want you to express brand through our APIs. We have APIs for color, typography, shape. We want our components to feel like they belong within your existing application. The fourth reason why you should use MDC is because using MDC is leveraging MDC engineering. We're going to be releasing new components and new features through 2018 and beyond. MDC is the only component library which evolves with material design. So our MDC engineers, they collaborate directly with the designers who are writing material design guidelines. That's why you can depend on us to make sure that we release new components that evolve with the material design spec. I hope you all have learned a lot today about how to incorporate material design into your existing code base. You've seen some new material tools and how they work with MDC. You've seen some example code actually using MDC. And you've heard about some of the benefits of MDC in your existing code base. That's all we have. Thank you so much. We're going to take questions here in a second, but I just want to let you know that we have a Dome F, which is the design/accessibility dome. We're going to be hanging out there all day tomorrow, so you can come and ask us questions there as well. But thank you so much.
Thank you.